Call the meeting to order. Please rise for pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Everybody, if we could make sure we got our phones silenced, and take a moment for silent prayer, please. Okay, thank you. Starting roll call. I'm starting today. Mike Smith, present. Mr. Dove? Present. Mr. Reed?
Here.
Mr. Culberson?
Here.
And Mr. Here. Everybody's accounted for. We got public comment. Again, I remind everybody to come up and introduce yourself and where you live, and you've got 5 minutes to speak. And I'm going to try not to destroy some of these names, but the first one is Thaddeus. Thank you, sir. Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Thaddeus Brustowitz, and I live at 25310 Tonganoxie Road. And I'm here to talk about the High Prairie Fire District, or Fire Department. And I was going to get up here and bedazzle you with my brilliance, but I'm afraid that's not going to happen. And all I can do is comment. I believe that Leavenworth needs that fire department. As we look at Leavenworth and the growth, it is tremendous. I know I've heard of 30 to 60 houses going out by Stranger Road in Jarbelo, which is part of our township. Another developer wants to build on the other side of Bosman Hill. Seymour is a development. And last night, I heard or read that they want another 400 homes going south of Lansing. Well, this is a tremendous amount of growth, and we need these firemen. We need these fire trucks. We can't just one town, one group, trying to supply them all. The other point that I wanted to bring up was I've heard, well, you're only going to have volunteers. Well, volunteers are the people that really want to save their homes. They want to save their neighbors. I have a lot of respect for those volunteers. So, that's about all.
We appreciate it. Thank you. Okay, we have Joan Murnane. Hoping I was getting that right. I'm terrible with names, so forgive me. Welcome.
Thank you very much.
And I'd like to especially appreciate Joan being here as one of my constituents.
I'm counting on it. And I see many friends on this board, many friends. So I'm here today to solve a problem before it happens. Okay? I'm here in the capacity, I'm Dr. Joan Murnane. I'm a large animal veterinarian for 40 years. I have multiple additional degrees. I've been a visiting professor, which is an honorary position at K-State for 4 years. But I have experience with ranch rodeo that goes back 40 years in states from Texas, Colorado, Alabama, Georgia, Montana, Idaho, and now Kansas. And I understand that Leavenworth wants to be a welcoming community, and I want to do everything to increase the horse industry, to increase the opportunity for people to make a living through agriculture and livestock. But I think the board does not have enough information at this point in time to grant a special use permit until we go back to basics and do due diligence and what exactly ranch rodeo is and what these horse tripping and bull tailing involves. So if you've passed out those brochures, the first one talks about what a ranch rodeo is in terms of the rodeo. There are 10 events, 9 for men, 1 for women. Of those 10 events, three of the 6 allowed for bulls are opposed by the American Veterinary Medical Association, the American Association of Bovine Practitioners, AAEP, USDA, USD-APHIS, the Humane Society, PETA. Of the 3 out of the 6 that horses can participate in, they are all across the board considered abuse of animals. 14 states have made horse tripping and bull tailing illegal. The reason there's so few is because not all states approve rodeos. So those states in which rodeos are approved, most of them, the majority, have disallowed these specific events within a ranch rodeo. In addition to that, I've included a compliance study that was done at private expense by a group of concerned citizens that was section number 8 that details their concerns. And what I don't think the board is aware of is the potential for ethical, legal, civil, and criminal charges personally and as a county and governing board if they do not do their due diligence and understand. Now, this is not illegal per se, ranch rodeos, horse tripping, etc. is not illegal in the state of Kansas. It's only because an article by the AVMA that warns us as large animal veterinarians horse tripping is under the radar. Nationally and statewide, in states, it's governed by the Department of Agriculture, the Kansas statute for animal cruelty, which I've included here, that specifically disallows this. The Professional Rodeo Association, which sets the standards for rodeos, specifically disallows this. And there are specifics that I can address at another venue. And what I would like to offer this body, there is a way to have a ranch rodeo. There are plenty of other things that go into a ranch rodeo. But horse tripping and bull tailing are considered across the board unethical, illegal in most states, and abuse of animals. So I have included in there a list of videos that specifically shows. Now, we can argue semantics, that we only wrap the horse in the rope, we wrap the rope around the horse and we let it go. You don't put ropes around horses' legs, period. You don't pull a bull tail. You have cats and dogs. You don't swing the cat's tail because you pull the spinal cord out. You don't pick up your kids and run them around with your arms because you stretch the brachial plexus. You do lifelong damage. One of the most common problems with dogs is a small animal practitioner is they get their tails run over by cars. That's the same thing that's happening to a bull. You're pulling on that spinal cord. Those animals end up as either paralyzed, incontinent, or with broken backs. And those are the things that you will see in those videos, and that is the reason why the American Veterinary Medical Association, the state of Kansas, through the Animal Welfare Act, prohibits those specific activities.
Okay.
So, thank you very much.
Thank you for providing the information to us.
So, just a point of personal privilege, I want to ask you a question. Would what they're doing, even though they say they're not tightening around the legs, be still considered a violation of the law?
Right, and if you will look at that video, and if you will look at the specific pictures taken at the JR Ranch during a ranch rodeo, shows in detail arrows where that's prohibited. And for instance, they say, the reason I'm here today is because I listened to the previous commission where it was stated that what's the difference between roping a cow in American rodeo, PRCA rodeo, versus ranch rodeo. If you flip them over by the horns, you flip them over by the tail, what's the difference? If you flip a cow over in a professional rodeo, Cowboy Rodeo Association, you are disqualified and it's considered a demeanor and possibly a felony. You're comparing apples and oranges. Comparing those cattle are protected, they have headgear, you cannot shortstop a cow, and all of these nuances make a huge difference into whether or not you're going to carte blanche. Now, I'm here to solve a problem. There are many aspects of the ranch rodeo that can go on. But as it's being built now, if you look at under the compliance guidelines with the special use permit, it's very well advertised. Money is changing hands, even if it's donations. Prizes are given. Alcohol is in abundance. And the crowds are in the 300 to 500s. And if you look at an aerial of the facilities, they are not set up to do that. To pay special attention to number 7, where in one 6-hour period in Colorado, 9 bulls were injured, 2 were killed, 7 tails were pulled off, and of those 5, they had to be euthanized. And because there were no provisions under a special use permit for carcasses or disposal of animals, it was horrific. And that was in 2010, and that was the basis for which Colorado passed the law to prohibit this activity.
Okay.
Good information.
Thank you. Appreciate you coming in, Dave. Julie Downs. Good morning.
You know, I just want to say that the difference here this week than last week is that with Dr. Mernan's testimony, with Crystal Swan Blackdear's testimony about the tail pulling, the horse tripping, and then Mr. Hayrow coming up and saying that they do rope around the legs, but they let go. They do pull the bull's tails, but hey, in America, they wrap the horns. What's the difference? That's exactly, he said, what's the difference? It's our culture. The difference is that these animals are going in to arenas unknowing of dangerous predators that are going to come out with their legs broken, their tails, their spines contorted. They will be forever changed. My husband told me these animals are never the same in the name of a sport. We were told 20 years ago by National Animal Rights Organization, were these going on, and we called the county and they said they weren't going to allow them, and I told them that. And 20 years later, they're still going on. We have the chance today to protect. We are a civilized culture who cares about humane treatment of animals. We have a chance today. I think a lot of people don't know what's going on at these rodeos. If we said cockfighting, dogfighting, if he had come up there and said that last week, we'd stop these events in a heartbeat. But I don't think until Dr. Mernan has really explained this, and thank you for coming today, that we really understand what's going on. It's vicious. We as a civilized society, I think in this county, in this state, in this country, will start learning more about this and take action to. I appreciate your consideration, and thank you very much, Commissioners.
Thank you. Appreciate your comments. Dennis, did you want to say something, sir?
Yeah.
Good morning.
Yeah.
Come on down.
Most of you know that I served as county commissioner from 13 to 17, and that prior to that I served the Tonganoxie City Council for 2 years. And we worked pretty hard on the city council to acquire and also develop the industrial park south of Tonganoxie. And then when I was on the commission, the LCBC, which I was a part of, worked pretty hard to get new people into the industrial park. Now we have a company down there that spent $450 million to develop a plant that is state-of-the-art, even by their expression. And they also donated money to build a dog park in Tonganoxie, which is great. You need to get down and see that if you haven't. But I wonder, all those efforts that we put into that, how that's going to look to Bill's Pet Nutrition that put in all this money for investment and all the efforts that they've gone through to be Tonganoxie's largest employer and taxpayer and all that, if approximately 4 miles down the road we're going to allow horse tripping and bull-tail pulling, and it's what's clearly animal abuse, to a company that has spent 80 years culturing animal care. To me, if you talk to the people at Hills, it would be like a slap in the face to them. And also, it would not put Leavenworth County in a very good light if all of a sudden we're appearing on the nightly news wondering about the activities that have gone on down there. Personally, I don't think $10 million or $1 million is enough for personal injury down there. We have bleachers that were handmade that could be in a rusted condition, whatever. If half of them were to collapse under the weight of the crowd, or if a bull were to get loose, or whatever happened, $1 million won't last one kid in an emergency setting for much more than 24 hours. So $1 million to me is not enough. I really think it needs to be at least $10 million, and I believe that we need to have a structural engineer go down and look at the bleachers, and I also believe that they need to come up with a better plan to mediate the animal waste and also the human waste than what they've said to date. The animal waste, the planning and zoning was prepared to give them, I believe, up to 10 days to get that cleaned up. Do you know how many inches of rain we can get in 10 days? The whole situation is right next to a creek. And we have other cattle ranches around there. And not to mention, we really need to know where these cattle are coming from, what their history is, and to make sure that they've all got inspection by area veterinarians to make sure that they're not sick when they come to this country or to this area. So that's all I really had to add. I appreciate your time. I know you don't have an easy job because, well, I've tried to do it. Probably not done as well a job as you guys have, but I appreciate your time this morning.
Thank you, Dennis.
Thank you.
It's good to see you. Benny, come on down. Morning.
Morning, Commissioners. Morning. Benny Phillips, 26551 179th Street, Leavenworth, Kansas. I own the livestock market on Linwood Road. I was kind of shocked when Aurelio told me that he was having such an issue up here. I got to meet him about 5-6 years ago. Really appreciate him and his family. They come to my sales. We've really got to know one another. He's in a construction business, which I am too. So we have several commonalities there. Over the years, I've got to see what he does over there and stuff. I'm very impressed. I like the culture is just, it's something different than we're not used to. So I did a few things trying to figure out, what was going on here and stuff. I called my state vet, Dr. Elsie McCoy. She told me yesterday that as far as health papers coming to the facility, if they're an in-state animal, horses, cattle, whatever they are, they do not need health papers. They have law that all horses moving in the state of Kansas will eventually have to have a Coggins test. So that's kind of I would say it's a deal that somebody has to check that to make sure that happens. Problem with that is that if they get pulled over and they don't have a cognizance test, they can quarantine them animals. So in the horse industry, most of them guys carry their yearly cognizance papers. Are good for a year. Health papers are usually a to and from spot, point A to point B. I know that was a question raised last week from somebody, that the health papers. A gentleman back here, last week he talked about, you might need a ton of porta potties up there. I called Milton Madden Reynolds. He does the fairgrounds, done it for several years. He said 1 per 100 people. He said if they're drinking a lot of alcohol and it's a big party, he said I'd maybe go to 1 to 75. So that kind of answers your question on that there. The veterinarian back here, when she got up and spoke, she talked about ranch rodeos. These ain't a ranch rodeo. It's a Mexican rodeo. She talked about these cattle and stuff that could not be flipped over. That's not true. They do it every day throughout the United States. Some states they don't. But bulldogging, they flip a cow over. They do not wrap the horns on a bulldogging steer. They are bare, nothing. They wrap the horns on a team roping steer. Anybody does that there. These guys are as conscious about their animals as anybody. These animals that they work with, that they use, they're probably as protected and taken care of as well as their children. Aurelio's got young kids and stuff, and I sure appreciate how, he is a family man. His sister Norma back there, she just works her butt off. She's a brain specialist of some sort. I can't even say what she is. She works 3 jobs. They're here to stay. They're a good asset to our community, and I appreciate what they're doing over there because they're bringing a different culture to our area that people don't see on an everyday basis. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben. Okay, that wraps up the. We'll go on now to business. Mark?
Commissioners, I don't have anything on the agenda for administrative business. I did share an email with you earlier about our spot on the LCDC governing board, and I just wanted to make sure you had a chance to see that.
Yeah, I'm kind of confused because if y'all don't know, if you haven't read LC, we have Vanessa who sits on it, and they have informed her that since the county cut back and doesn't pay LCDC, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mark, that we no longer have a seat on that board. It was always my understanding that we paid the Port Authority, and that money's passed on to LCDC. So if that's the case, why don't we have a seat? I think that's something we're going to have to check further into and find out what's happening here. I know they weren't happy about us cutting back, but folks, taxes are terrible. Property taxes are killing us. We've had to make some serious cuts this year, and that was one that we cut in half. We're still receiving, I believe, Port Authority's receiving $85,000, which under an agreement is passed on to LCDC. Now, so I'm a little confused on how that's working out. I think we need to ask some more questions, but I just want to make sure y'all were aware of that.
So I have a question.
Go ahead, Mike.
How did this information get conveyed to the county? Were we informed by them, or
No.
was it just an announcement in the?
I received an email in the 10 o'clock hour yesterday that had like an urgent exclamation point flag on it. And it was just an email from the director of LCDC asking for a phone call or an in-person meeting prior to Thursday's board meeting with LCDC. So then I called her and she wasn't available. She called me back. And then I was informed over the phone that with their new president coming on board, their new president wanted their bylaws to be followed. And their bylaws stated that in order to have a seat on the board, you had to be an investor. and with the county.
And we're not an investor.
They consider the county not an investor in LCDC, is what I was informed.
Let me ask the county administrator a question. The last information I had received is that we were the number one funder of the LCDC. Is that, and the money is distributed through the Port Authority, but the last information I received was, and maybe we're the number two funder behind the city of Leavenworth now, but last I knew we were number one funder.
Well, Commissioner, for 50 plus years, we've been the sole funder for the Port Authority. And so any money that comes out of the Port Authority is county funds. We've chosen to give it to the Port Authority as basically our arm of development, which has representation from the cities and the county on it. And then they decide to distribute the funds. I think the semantics that the LCDC is looking at is that we do not write them a check directly from the county, that it's funded through the Port Authority, so that's their stance on why we would no longer have voting rights on the LCDC.
So is the Port Authority the number one funder of the LCDC?
To my knowledge, they are. I don't know where this year, what kind of funding they're getting this year from who. But for the last, since we went to the format where the Port Authority gives the money, Port Authority has been their number one funding resource, and I'm pretty sure they are, and if they aren't, they're at least number two.
I would just caution the LCDC in the economic development arena. We need to work together as a team. But if they decide they want to go down this path and not work together, our budget cycle is coming up.
See, Mike, that's what I informed them. I said, if you're going to make this kind of move against the county, and that's all it is, a move, then you probably need to do it at budget time. Yeah. And then let us know. If you're saying we don't have a seat at budget time, then we can take the appropriate action. But just to get a call from one of our county commissioners and be told that they're not sitting on it. Now, I know the Port Authority and the LCDC have been wanting to have a meeting with us, but at the best time for those to have those meetings, we can see them anytime, but I always thought the best time of those meetings is our budget's coming up, and that's where we could talk about it. I'm really concerned. I just feel like I'm missing something, so I don't want to jump out there yet, but I am really concerned. I am now the rep on the Port Authority, and we do have a week, so I can assure you I'm going to be asking some questions.
Where are those funds distributed?
Our funds?
Yes.
LCD. Most of it, my understanding, I'm going to have a clearer makeup on it. My understanding, a lot of it goes to LCDC.
Well, when?
So quarterly, the Port Authority asks for a distribution, and we give a quarter of the funds each time. And it goes to the Port Authority. That's not the LCDC directly, but to the Port Authority. And then the Port Authority board votes on whether to fund the LCDC through those.
Okay.
I did ask in that phone call that the county receive a letter, because it's not between the director and myself, it's between LCDC and the county. And they seemed confused as to what that would even say, and I said the same information that you're telling me. And so I think they're working on that. I think the email that was forwarded this morning from her states that they're working on that, but it does state, that they didn't want me to show up on Thursday assuming that the county had a board seat. So I think it's unprofessional, to say the least, and disappointing behavior from my view. The people that are on the executive board, I'm going to assume, are the ones that made this decision, and I think they have some explaining to do. So,
Agree. Okay, anything else on that? Okay, Mark, that's what you brought up. I don't have anything for the administrative business. Sir, do you have any?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I had the opportunity to visit the mental health or Unlimited
good.
yesterday, and I was quite impressed with the way that they handle things. I've got a couple notes here that bear with me a little bit. There was
The ACT team, which is part of the Mental Health Advisory Council, has done an excellent job. And one of the things that I was really impressed with is that those patients have very high needs and they're high risk. And I wanted to find out from them, I haven't yet, is how long has the ACT team been under the Mental Health Advisory Council, along with the Guiding Light. Those individuals, Guiding Light is from age 18 up. Anyone under the they do not have any responsibilities for. So just to note, I think this is something that in mental health we have been pushing this thing down the road over and over and over and over again, and a large amount of those individuals are incarcerated for crimes that it should not have been a crime in the first place. But since we don't have that,
Someone interceded and
right,
get into it. Yeah.
we don't have the capabilities to do some of those things. So that's one of the things I was really impressed with, how did they go about these and make sure that we're getting something for it. I witnessed a couple of people that I thought should be there, okay, but I didn't call anyone because I didn't know, I didn't want to get involved in that area. But I'll give you a full report next in 2 months when we reconvene.
Great. Appreciate that. Anything else, sir? Rebel Rouser? Nothing, Vanessa? Young man?
So I just wanted to bring up the fact that me and Commissioner Stephen met with Senator Klemp last week and went over a couple of issues.
Yeah.
One was the Genesis bill. We tried to explain to him that the Genesis bill is going to be extremely bad for Leavenworth County, as in bankrupting Leavenworth County if it passes and progresses like we think it's going to. We went over the disabled veterans bill, which we told him that we were all for that bill as long as they pass it with a salary cap, and the state somehow always funded it because they have a history of saying they'll fund something and then regressing and not funding it and throwing it on the county taxpayers. And if that happens, that would be disastrous for Leavenworth County, as long as and also Riley and Geary County.
Yeah.
He also showed his support for the 152 bridge idea, so we got some plans to get a committee together for that. We reiterated that we are for the 3% valuation cap, and kind of explained that to him. Went over, some of the reasons that some of the oppositions in Topeka were saying that they were opposed to it. And then the biggest thing we met with him for was we want to try to get him to present a bill that would allow counties to vote, county by county, to be allowed to use 1% income tax to replace county property tax. And so he said he was going to have research to do some numbers and go over that with us further. So he was very open to that idea. Because as far as I'm concerned, our county budget is on a downward spiral. We're in a flat spin. And the only way we're going to pull out of this flat spin is to come up with taxes from some other source. We cannot raise enough money off property tax to fund the county budget any longer.
Yeah, and I think, too, Jeff, one thing, and we had the meeting with him last Sunday for a couple hours. First of all, hat off to Senator Klemp. I've seen more out of him than I've seen out of the other ones in a long time. And I reminded him that Leavenworth did something like this, 10 or 15 years ago, and they cut the property tax either down in half or even closer than that because they went to this. Counties, by law, cannot go about that route unless we get some kind of legislation changes it, which would make such a drastic thing on people's bill that they see every year. So at least I'm glad he's looking at that and taking it and running with it. But I was impressed with our meeting with him.
Yep, and I meant you, not Commissioner Stephen. He's looking at me like, what are you talking about?
I didn't remember being there.
So I meant Commissioner.
He looks at us like that. Oh, wow. Anything else, Jeff?
Just the last thing was I was reached out to by our township fire department. My township fire department is asking about the doctors the way they have it set up to cover our liability and several other issues as far as medical. When the coroner, and Mark knows about it now, but I wanted to bring it up in case, so that everybody knows that I've reached out, because I think they're reaching out to each commissioner. So
They have.
make sure
I met with them too.
we make that part of the public record.
Yeah.
And so, and Mark, I'll let you go over basically what they're asking for.
So I haven't spoken to any of them. I know they've reached out to the commissioners, but I haven't spoken to any of them directly. So I'll do my best to relay what's been passed on to me from the commissioners. And that is that any entity that provides emergency services like EMS and the fire districts and fire departments, they're required to have oversight by a medical doctor. That's their medical director. Each of them have their own contract for a medical director, just like the county does. It renews annually, and there's a cost associated with that, obviously, because one, they review all of our calls to make sure standard of care is being followed, and two, they provide coverage via their liability insurance for the agencies that they cover. Currently, each one of those districts contracts separately, and it sounds like they would like the county to take that on as a group policy versus just them doing it individually. Again, I have not seen any formal requests, so I'm just assuming that's what they're asking. I've got our our EMS director looking into if that's possible, what the cost might be, because I'm sure it's not free, and then how that impacts our policy that we do not subsidize other taxing entities who have the ability to, at a lower level, tax the people who are receiving those services. So once I receive a request and I get some more information from Mr. Miller, I will pass that on to the board. But right now, I think they're just doing the groundwork.
And I know it's a left pocket, right pocket thing, and they're trying to cut their budgets, and so they're thinking this applies to the whole county, so they're hoping that the county will take on the responsibility of the bill itself. I have no problem. I think it's a great idea to try to combine services, combine contracts. You usually get a better rate when you do quantity, and so we're going to check into that, and if we can save them some money and do it that route, that's great. As far as us taking on the bill itself, I don't see any way we can fit that in our budget.
When I spoke to a group, because each district, I had Lansing and Delaware and Leavenworth, I met with them. I told them we can't take on any more debt like that. One of the things that it did concern me, though, was after I started asking, well, who pays what and how much, it's all over the board.
Yeah.
I mean, Leavenworth's getting ready to get stuck with a big one. Then you got Lansing, you got High Prairie, you got all these places. There's a totally different cost. So that was probably more disturbing than anything. So information that Mark's gathering from Jamie and like that probably give us a better idea on the decision we need to go forward with.
Yeah.
So it was a good meeting. I know Mike did it too. So
yeah, it could save us some money and at least make things more consistent.
Yeah, I agree.
I did ask for a copy of Dr. McBrackney's contract just to see what. I've never seen a copy of it to see what it says, and I know we've talked about down the road here reviewing that and looking at that, because I think there's some issues that need to be addressed.
Well, it's coming up on budget time, and that's when we really need to dig in and not let these things slide by, because then we get caught again. So, and I know you brought it up last year, Mike, so I totally agree with you. Okay, anybody else? Mike, do you have anything?
The only thing I have, I'll bring this up at the end. I'm going to go more in depth with the other commissioners at the end. The legislature did adopt the constitutional amendment to cap property taxes at 3%. The Senate adopted it. The House is resistant, and they have introduced their alternative, which is a rolling average. And I want to go over that because the testimony is like tomorrow, and I want to see what the commissioners think about whether we should weigh in as supporting the House version or weighing in as neutral on their version. I mean, I don't think we're opposed to anything that helps in the property tax arena, but I'll read this to us at the end and some of the contrasting. Also, we did meet with Senator Lemp, a group in favor of Amtrak funding, and he is supportive, and testified last week for the Senate Bill 86 that would tie a little portion of the Amtrak network from Oklahoma City to Newton, and it's 80% federal funding, so for about 5 years, I believe. And then eventually that would let us maybe get some more operation from Kansas City to Oklahoma City and then to Dallas.
Yeah,
And tie the central states that tie the flyover country into the national network.
Yeah. Very good, Mike. Thank you. Okay, do we have any further on that? I'll move on to consent agenda. Motion?
So moved.
Second? Okay, motion and second. Any discussion? Okay, begin the roll call with myself. Aye.
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 Passes. Thank you, folks. Formal board action. Consider a motion to approve a letter appointing John Khalil, I got it right, as the Leavenworth County's alternate trustee on the Carrot Board of Trustees. Somebody want to speak on this?
I'll take care of it.
Okay.
Commissioners, Carrot provides our work comp. They have a board of trustees. I'm the primary contact. We have an alternate. Currently, the HR director is an alternate, but according to the bylaws, not allowed to vote because she lives across the state line in Missouri, but we don't hold that against her much. Anyways, so John Khalil is their new deputy county counselor who has a lot of experience in work comp and also lives on the Kansas side, so he would be able to vote. So we'd like to just name him as the alternate so that he can attend in my absence.
Makes sense.
Is he going to give a speech before we vote?
I had not planned on that happening. If you'd like for that to happen,
No, hold on.
I don't know if he wishes to.
Mike, once you get attorneys talking, we're never going to get this stopped. So we know he will do it. So with that being said, if there's no other comments, I'd entertain a motion.
I move that we appoint John Khalil as the Leavenworth County alternate trustee on the Carrot Board of Trustees.
Second.
Motion and second. Any more discussion? Start the roll call. Aye.
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 Thank you for taking that. We appreciate it. Okay, next item is Resolution 25-6, special use permit for RJ. Morning.
Commissioners, if I may, before we begin discussion,
Right.
I know you've heard some commentary today and you've been given some materials which I'm sure are very informative. Just want to remind the Commission that while you may take the materials, any decision that you make today needs to be based on information that was presented at the public hearing. If you think you need additional information, then you could consider having a new public hearing.
That's where I'm going. This last minute, like you talked about we at the last minute, does not go over well with me. I'd prefer, we'll let everyone speak once, I prefer sending this back to the Planning Commission. Now we have another article that they need to look at. Not only that, but the Sheriff's Department, we've been told by the applicant that he has till March to do this, and I don't know where that sets on the timetable, but I think everything has to be looked at, and I want everybody's information heard so I know the rest of the county commissioners can make a decision on the facts and not I saw this or I saw that or this is what they do in one state and the other. We need to really, in my opinion, take a closer look at this. That's my 2 cents. Mike?
Question for Misty. Technically, at this time, we cannot take into consideration the sheriff's letter. Is that correct?
You cannot base your decision off of the information from the sheriff's letter.
Can we take it into consideration?
I would advise that you not.
Okay.
That's
very good.
That's why I'm recommending it goes
that's
back.
the answer I wanted.
And same with the doctor's report. Doctor's report, too. Commissioners, you heard what I had to say. Do y'all have any other comments on this before we go down this road? And see, I want to make sure we're open and fair to the landowner, too. I mean,
Yes.
It is a different way of doing things. Other people from other countries celebrate things. I also noticed that since this has come up a couple of times, maybe in the future we need to take a closer look at our code on things like this and see if there's anything that we need to add to it or not. But that can't be looked at now, that we have to deal with what we've got in front of us and what's coming to us on the 12th hour.
Mr. Chairman, can I make a motion for discussion, put it out there, and then we can discuss off the motion?
We can discuss it now.
Well, I thought I'd just go ahead and make a motion.
Go ahead, sure you can.
In order.
We get a
All right.
second on it, okay.
I would move that we return a resolution, let's see, the case DAV 24-125 to the Planning Commission for their consideration of additional conditions, including certification of security on site with a county employee to be paid by the applicant. Licensed vendor on site if alcohol is going to be on site to provide the alcohol, making sure that minors are not served alcohol. Certification that Kansas laws are observed. Certification that any out-of-state registrations or licenses for animals are provided for and certified that they are meeting state law. Assurance that gambling and horse tripping are specifically not to be permitted at the event. Reviewing and potentially enhancing the liability insurance. And reviewing and having an inspection required for the bleachers. And all of that to be considered by the Planning Commission.
Commissioner, may I clarify, are you sending it back for a new public hearing or just asking the Planning Commission to consider these requirements?
I'd like a new public hearing. I believe from what you've said, in order that the sheriff's letter can be considered and that the new information can be considered.
Well, let me ask this. Can this information be considered before we go through the whole process again, and this be sent back for the additional things that we received in last week without going back and have a public hearing on it?
The public hearing has opened and closed, so the decision of the commission needs to be information at the public hearing. If there are factors that inhibit you from making a decision today, you can send it back to the Planning Commission for consideration of those factors. However, if this board believes that the public hearing wasn't adequate, I've heard concerns about the weather and folks not being able to get out and provide testimony at that hearing, you can certainly ask for a new hearing and ask the Planning Commission to, in addition, consider the factors that Commissioner Stephen just set out.
You know, I know it's in March and we're getting time frame. I'm not so sure I want to take any longer than this when we have to. I think if people, the word to get out, people will be there. Mike's made it clear, and the rest of us have made it clear on some things that we want them to look at. I think that's the way we just should send it back. Mike?
Well, I just want to make sure that we can that the Planning Commission can take into account.
Yes, that's what you said.
The sheriff's letter.
Yep.
Would that have to be a new public hearing or not?
That is quasi-judicial, so everybody has to have new due process on this. If you believe that additional information is required to make a decision, the appropriate response would be to send it back to Planning Commission for a public hearing, and the information could be submitted at that time and allow the applicant a chance to respond to it.
So that's my motion.
So let me just make sure, because I'm trying just to get people, I'm sure, getting tired of coming up here and seeing us. Can this information be looked at by the Planning Commission, or does it have to be a public hearing on the two things that we just received? Can they look at this next time they meet and take a look, or does a Planning Commission has to be brought in and go through that motion again?
To consider
Don't give me the attorney, just tell me yes or no, Misty.
I'm just not made that way, Commissioner.
I know attorneys aren't built that way.
If this board would like the Planning Commission to consider additional information, you will need a new public hearing.
That's it. Okay.
Question.
Yes, sir.
How do we get that information to the Planning Commission of things we would like them to look at for the next hearing?
That would be included in the motion, so the direction would be sent back to the Planning Commission showing that this commission is asking for a public hearing and specific consideration of all the items that would be in the motion.
Okay.
All these items listed.
Plus whatever else.
And if there's any other items that anyone wants to add.
I think, Mike, you cleared up, and I know we had some folks in the audience. I asked John Jackson to make sure we had those marked down about things. I think that's the best we can do.
I would point out, if there's a new public hearing, additional information can be brought in.
Right.
It's not capped at these two things. It's a whole new public hearing, and the applicant may have additional information or people that they would like to bring forward to offer testimony.
Whoever wants to, on whatever side you're
Can I just ask for some clarification?
Sure.
Have we done this? Have we done a second hearing before?
Oh, yeah. On this one or others?
Others.
In another case.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we sent
Okay.
those back and forth.
Okay.
Not very often, because we try to get them worked out, but this is taking a couple of different angles that I didn't see coming, so.
Okay.
And definitely when the sheriff provided us his information, we want that to be considered.
Okay.
What about the information from veterinarians that are telling us that there's some things that are going on that we have that documentation for, but we haven't instructed the planning commission to look at those things?
Those are things that I believe, John, correct me if I'm wrong, that we last time, but I asked you to prepare for a list of things that we can be looking at, the horse tail, the tripping. So those things will be part of that presentation, along with everything else that's included that the doctor and Vinny brought up on both sides of
And
this
that's
issue.
kind of in the motion as far as certify that they're observing Kansas laws and that they're not doing the bull tailing and the horse tripping.
Does that include a veterinarian on site at an event?
It could, when it goes back to the planning commission, they could recommend, they can make recommendations back to us for that if they chose.
That's how, yeah.
Commissioner Dove, are you asking that that be one of the other conditions that they for sure consider?
Yes.
Well, then we can add that to the motion.
Yes.
And I'd like to hear more on that. A lot of these things, I agree with some of them, but not all of them, on no matter what sides. But I think it's good to hear the Planning Commission's point of view and what they think. They may give us something that we're not even thinking about that we can have come back to us. So I like the motion that Commissioner Stevens made. So we're ready. I'll call the roll. Anyone?
I just want to say,
We get a second. I don't think we have.
We didn't get it. I'm amending it to include what Commissioner Dove stated was a licensed veterinarian on site.
Yes.
Second.
Now we're ready.
Thank you, Mike. Start. Aye.
Aye.
No.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, it passes. Heading back. I know it's clear as mud. We appreciate it. Okay. Next item we have is, I think, Mark, is it quarterly reports?
Yes.
Information system. Where's he at? Come on down. Good morning.
Morning. Come on up, David. I believe most of you already met David, but if you haven't, David Martin.
Good morning, David.
Mr. Martin.
How you doing?
He joined us in December. I'm going to be bringing him with me through the rest of this year because he's going to be taking my place next year when I get to follow the footsteps of the Culberson and finally retire.
Do you have a good sense of humor?
Yes,
Don't do it the way I did it.
Do you have good jokes that you can tell us?
I don't know about that. Some old Army jokes, yeah.
You got a year to get ready.
Yes, he's got a year to get acclimated, so I'm going to be bringing him anyway, so he'll be completely, ready for everything
Prepared
by
for
the
this
time this
board.
comes around.
Okay, go ahead.
So, you've read my written report. I'm not going to read it back to you, but I would highlight the Exchange server comment that I made early in the report. That was a relatively unexpected turn of events where Microsoft has decided we're not going to do our email servers the way that we have since 2000, forever. We're going to have to go to an on-cloud type of environment. I'm not excited about that, but it's kind of where it's at. We don't have much choice in the matter. So it's an unexpected turn of events, and we're going to have to do this by October. So I will be back before the commission probably in the next month to get an RFP approved, and we can go forward with this unexpected turn of events. At the end of the day, though, as it looks right now, the end user will largely not notice any changes. It will be transparent to them, which is pretty important. You rock the boat on 383 mailboxes, you'll have a lot of phone calls. So we're going to try to make sure that nobody even notices what took place. Their email will just be stored in a government cloud instead of on a server down in the basement. So it's going to cost the county more, naturally, but there's not much we can do about that. That was the only item I wanted to highlight, other than introduce you to. If there's any questions, I'll be happy to try to answer them.
Maybe I missed it in here. I know you're going to be coming back in October. What does something like this cost?
Right now, we're looking at about, our estimates, a little less than $20,000 a year, which is about 3 times more than what we were doing with our previous on-premise solution. We used to be able to buy it once and then use it as long as possible.
Right.
And we would often get 7, 8 years out of one very expensive license for exchange, which the current one we bought in 2018, I believe it was. So we've gotten about 7 years out of our current one. We'd spent about $30,000 on that license back then. So you break it down per year, we were spending around $7,000 or $8,000 a year on our exchange environment. This is going to kick that times 3. And of course, every year there will probably be a nominal increase.
Always is.
And as employees might expand, every mailbox has to be licensed every year. So if you add 5 employees, we just tick-tock up. So it will grow.
I got you. Okay. Any other questions for?
Not for me.
Okay, that was nice and easy.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, gentlemen.
See you in 3 months.
Yeah, Human Resources. Monica, come on down. Morning.
Morning, Commissioners. I can't believe that we have 2 full years of data since you asked me to start tracking attrition. Isn't that crazy?
We're so much older now.
I know, right?
So,
2023 and 24.
Go ahead, Monica.
You're fine. You can see over those 2 years, the last 2 years, we thought that we, didn't really know where we stood. It's been very consistent.
Yeah.
With our head count and our arrivals and departures, turnover is staying steady as well, and the low 20%. And we did see a little bit go down in our average tenure just because we had quite a few retire. Of the 107 departures last year in 2024, 85 of them were voluntary, meaning that was their choice to leave the county. And that's where we started to track the reasons why they were leaving. We are right on track with everyone else in the area, actually maybe even a little bit lower. So I didn't bring those numbers for our surrounding counties with me, but I do speak with the other HR people regularly, and everyone has experienced some turnover the last few years, and we actually are doing really well.
Good.
The last few months, or the last month, W-2s were a big thing for us, pay raises, end-of-year reports, a lot of things behind the scenes, necessarily that the employees, don't see going on. So I really wanted to recognize Jenna on my team for all of her hard work. She put in a lot of hours in January to make sure that W-2s and raises went in. We had that date on payday was supposed to be January 1st, and we moved it to the 31st so that we could get paid, and that moved it to a new tax year. So that was just a lot of work behind the scenes that needed to be done to make sure those were right, and then trying to get W-2s ready when we had a paycheck on the last day of the year. That was how had to be included. So our wellness incentive that we started in October has kicked off really well. We have 63 employees and 16 spouses who are currently taking advantage of the discount, going through all of the steps to be healthier and all of what it takes to earn that discount. And then our safety metrics, you can see that we went down 45 incidents in 23 down to 37 in 24. We already have 2 this year, but again, still working really carefully with the department heads on what we can do to have a safer environment, make sure everyone's aware of slip, trips, falls, being aware of driver safety, those kind of things.
Outstanding. I'll tell you, just seeing how we've grown when this became a department, when the county administrator made us aware of that, you've got a good group doing that. I mean, when I'm down there, you're always willing to assist, and I see you assisting other people too. I think that was a smart move on this board's part, is to make that an independent office so we could get some things done. And it's, when I see these claims coming down, people, these are hard to get down. I did it for years, so I'm very impressed with that. So thank you. Any more comments?
They're just doing a great job.
Does he have anything?
Fine.
Okay. Jeff?
Yep.
Mike?
Does our wellness program do anything with smoking cessation?
We don't necessarily highlight that, but there are options on Aetna's website that can help them if they want, what the steps are to take to get to that. We don't necessarily highlight that on our wellness program for the steps they need to do to earn the discount.
Okay.
But it is available
Because that's
for
a
them.
huge factor in health when you get older.
I agree.
Okay. Anything else, folks? All right, thank you. Appreciate the information. Okay, now we'll go to presentations. I think we've already said it, and Commissioner Culberson, I met with Senator Klemp. Very good meeting for 2 hours. And I met with Chief Gates out in Lansing, plus a couple other chiefs in the surrounding area about the medical issues, director about the cost that's associated, that's passed on to townships and things like that. So we're just getting started on information on that. And that's all I have. Commissioner Dove?
I have nothing.
Mr. Reed?
Well, I just kind of wanted to explain my vote a little bit, since I was a 4-1.
Hey, but you're conscious.
I did visit the property yesterday, and I met with a couple of the neighbors as well. But the reason for my no vote is that I was unable to have presented to me what I felt substantiated sending it back. It seemed to me that it was a thorough hearing and that there was robust discussion when the planning committee submitted it to us. And it also seemed to me that what we were presenting to them was going to be a change. And so also with it being a year opportunity, that's just hopefully helps explain some of my uncomfortability with believing that once we sent it back, it was going to come back with hard evidence on what we could do further. And so I hope that's the case.
That's what we're trying to get to.
Since that's the commission's decision, and so I look forward to that. Thank you.
Yeah, well, I appreciate those comments. I think we're all trying to get to the point that it's fair to everybody. And this is something, wouldn't say new, but something that we need to make sure we take the time on. So I appreciate your comments. Commissioner Culberson?
I don't have anything else.
Mr. Stephen, your
Well, I'll
turn.
go over this. The legislature did pass the constitutional amendment that would cap property taxes at 3% last week. But before that vote, there was this article that said Hawkins will not take up the House will not take up the amendment to limit property valuation increases. Hawkins says. So before the Senate voted, he announced this. So obviously, it looks like trying to influence the vote in the Senate. I'm not going to take it up, so you might as well vote no. So anyway, they did end up passing it. 28-11 was the vote, and believe it or not, there was 2 or 3 folks that were made it bipartisan. Let's say that.
Yep.
In response to that, just a couple days later, the House leadership came out and said, "Well, we have a property tax plan, and it would be a rolling average." And the problem is they didn't put in their amendment how many years the rolling average would be. You first got to pass the amendment. It's going to go to the voters open-ended what the number of years will be for the average. So the voters won't know how many years the average will be. So in order to figure out it's going to be very difficult when you're out on the campaign trail promoting this amendment to say how much property taxes are going to go down, because it could be a 10-year average, it could be a 5-year average, it could be an 8-year average. But in the amendment, it doesn't tell. It's going to have to pass, and then the legislature will pass separately how many years the rolling average would be. And that's why this proposal from the House doesn't go into effect until 2027. The cap on property taxes at 3% would go into effect a year earlier in 2026. So I just wanted to give you, and in this case, we're on the same page with the Kansas Policy Institute, and they wrote pretty good article about some of the problems with the bill, and I explained the one is that you don't know what the rolling average is going to be. The other is the rolling average that they're proposing in the House is only on residential property. The cap is on residential, commercial, and agricultural property. So it caps all classifications of property, but the rolling average is only going to apply to residential property. So one of the problems with this, which is very interesting because the ag groups have been in opposition, but one of the problems with the House version is you very much could get, if you're only putting the rolling average onto residential, you could get ag property actually seriously affected by this, increasing it, whereas the cap caps all types of property. So this could pass the burden on to agricultural property in a way that is even more impactful than the 3% cap. So they're going to have a hearing on this tomorrow, and I just wanted to hear what the other commissioners thought. I was kind of thinking, would I testify yes in favor of this because it's something and not nothing, or would we go neutral, go testify neutral on it and say, hey, this at least would be something, but the cap would be better? I mean, what's our response to this?
Comments?
I think Hawkins needs pressure to just go with the bill that the Senate
I agree.
sent.
I agree too. And I think, Mike, you explained that very well. It's going to cause issues if they go down that road. And we're trying to get relief for everybody, not just pushing it down to somebody else. That's what's happened to us in Leavenworth County.
I'm just interested in the fact that they're putting a bill forward that could actually hurt agricultural property more than the cap we've been, and it's been these agricultural groups that have been standing in the way of the cap. So it's politics in Topeka. Willett could explain it to us.
Yeah, he just smiles.
You did a very good job.
Jeff, do you have any comments on that? Okay.
You came to talk with me about that. We talked about what some averages might do. And so I just put like a 7-year average, and I just did it on my house. Took the history of my house, 7 years to look and see what kind of savings. Because my house went up double digits several years in a row.
Mine too.
I actually would have paid more under a 7-year average than I did just taking the hits as they came. Because the 2 years that were really big stay on for another 5 years.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
So it
They
actually
outweigh.
would have resulted in me paying higher property taxes.
Well, some of us are cynical to the fact where we're saying that maybe the House just wanted to have something so they could say they had something, and they're really just going to kill property tax relief all the way around.
Well, I'm just concerned about leadership in the House. It tends to bother me, and I know there's probably some different opinions on that, but it seems like every time a common sense idea comes out to help the citizens, the leadership won't get it to the floor or it gets destroyed. But at least I see some movement. We've been working on this for years, so hopefully something will come out of there. Any other comments on that? If not, entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move we adjourn.
Second. I don't think anybody wants to stay here. I'll start voting aye.
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 Okay, we'll take a 5-minute break, then we'll take up the work session to discuss Fire District 1.